going on, guys? It is February 11th, 2022, Friday, and we are going on about 2 full weeks of protests in Canada up north regarding COVID restrictions, vaccination mandates, lockdowns, quarantine procedures, and truckers leading the charge there. And it appears that the establishment of the Canadian government, the Liberal Party, is not going to back down here. I've been watching very closely the Canadian Parliament every single day, watching Candice Bergen, Trudeau, and just the comments in general over there in Canada in their government. And yesterday, as you are aware, Trudeau walked out. And as he was walking out, there was a lot of jeering and just like kind of kicking him out the door, essentially verbally, from the Conservative Party. And I have to say that it's rather interesting how the establishment Canadian stance is to just side talk all of the points brought up by the science, all this kind of talking point of restrictions globally being released and internationally in the United States. Also, the Candice Bergen and the Conservative Party kept bringing up great points about the science changing, mask mandates being lifted, and many of the top doctors in Canada were saying that, she's referencing these doctors saying that the vaccine doesn't work, and Trudeau and the stance of the Liberal government was the way forward to freedom and the relaxing of restriction is basically 100% vaccination. And the point was made in the Parliament that, well, dude, you're triple vaccinated supposedly, yet you still tested positive, so what's the point, right? And so the government, the left-standing government there in control, refused to acknowledge those statements, refused to, they side-talked all of these types of statements, factual-based information, fact-based arguments. And so, just from a debate standpoint, whenever you're in a confrontation with someone verbally or over text or something like that, face-to-face, and they refuse to acknowledge the points that you're making, and they instead side-talk the points and talk about other things, that means they've lost. And the way I debate, which is a very confrontational way, is I just start to clown on you, right? I just start to pick on you and start to destroy you and make personal attacks because you have forfeited your position. You have forfeited your ground. Like in football, whenever you see someone fumble the ball, a turnover as a consequence of that fumble, that's how I look at that, parlance, right? That's how I look at that. That within the discussion of like sword fighting or something like that, right? Like when they stop striking against your strikes, they have lost their position. They have lost their advanced momentum, right? Their forward momentum. And that's when you press the attack. And so we see that happening on the streets and in the government, in the Parliament of Canada. And then, as you all know, the attempts to use GoFundMe were shut down at the behest of the government. And the Canadian government even went so far, I think the state or local government declared it illegal to provide material support through Give, Send, Go, right? And so even now, Give, Send, Go is under fire. And last I checked last night, they were at $8 million of their $16 million goal. And then, of course, in Ottawa, the police were shutting down the trucker convoys and the people's ability to provide fuel. And so you see videos of regular people walking around with empty and full tanks of gas, and then the police, the Metro Police there in Ottawa, arresting and confiscating those jerry cans, as they call them in Canada. Which is absurd. Absolutely absurd. So here we coming up on this weekend, right? The second week, full week, I guess it'd be like the third full weekend now, it's Friday, of this trucker situation there. And I don't see it slowing down from the side of the protesters. They even tried to roll out, Nazi flags, Confederate flags, and the actual photographer of the Prime Minister was seen taking the close-up picture with this monstrous camera of the Nazi flag or something like that, right? And then there's the angle that the Nazi or swastika symbols that you see there are in relation to Trudeau. That people are calling Trudeau a Nazi, that his policies are Nazi, right? And they're being mischaracterized as, oh, see, swastikas at the protest. That's out of context, and there's no, they shouldn't use that type of iconography. It's a stupid use of that iconography because it can be used against you, right? And then also simultaneously the Jewish stars iconography is being used there, and the reason why is because people are saying I have to have this COVID pass in order to go about my daily business here in Canada, right? And so they're wearing the Jewish star, yellow, reminiscent of the Holocaust, to kind of draw a ideological parallel to the idea that we are a separate group of people, right? We are apartheid, we are being exploited essentially like the Jews were in the Holocaust, right? So one of the things that I see coming, there's two possible outcomes here. A, the protesters lose and the police come out there and beat their asses, and that appears to be what I think the government's next move has to be. They're going to have to come out there and beat their asses and knock them out and move them out. That's the only thing that they can do, the government. Or back down, which I just by judging the rhetoric of Trudeau and his party, I just don't see them backing down. And so at a parliamentary level, they're going to have to do some sort of referendum, no confidence, or special election or something along those lines to get rid of that party from a governmental administrative law perspective. That has to happen. If that doesn't happen, then the street action with the protesters, etc., is going to have to ratchet up. And there's two possibilities there. Maintain peaceful protests and get your ass beat, get arrested, which I believe is a fail. That's stupid. Or B, show up with firearms and say, guys, you're not going to bully us around. You know what I mean? I'm not advocating violence here, but what I am advocating is, if you remember the Bundy Ranch scenario here in America, federal snipers and federal agents were surrounded by domestic citizens armed with bigger and better guns in greater numbers. And so you had pictures of federal snipers trained on protesters at the Bundy Ranch, and then those federal snipers being surrounded by citizen snipers. And so in that case, the federal government backed down. I'm talking about this from just a case study analysis perspective. And what am I getting at? Is that clearly they don't have the resources or the power or the ability in theater to project power. Like, what are they going to do? Call tow truckers to tow the truckers? That's not going to happen. In fact, they've already been trying to do that, and that has already failed. None of the tow trucks are going to comply or take take away other people's. They're not going to do that. That's just not going to happen. You cannot expect the proletariat to go and regulate the proletariat. You know, the bourgeoisie cannot expect that to happen. And so what has to happen then is the authoritarian class, you know, the police, the enforcers, the dogs, to use the Pink Floyd analogy, they're going to have to use their military. And that's the whole point of this video. I want to talk about that. You know, in my mind, I see this going one or two ways. The government shuts down, backs down, reforms, and releases all restriction. You know, a nice to have would be an apology. However, I just, you know, we're not going to get the apology. It's not going to happen. But, you know, a complete about face. And we're seeing that here in America, and we're seeing that globally, by the way. We're seeing that in other countries where their states are relaxing and calming down because they see what's happening in Canada and they don't want that. In fact, there appears to be, dovetailing on last week's video, a entire about face here happening globally, where the globalists appear to be backing down from their position of authority on this COVID thing, and either they're pivoting to the next crisis, which will be economic hyperinflation or, you know, a third world war. But nonetheless, they appear to be pivoting away from COVID as a lockdown, as a main battle platform, right? As an instrument. They are walking away and ditching COVID globally. You see that happening right now, but not in Canada. And so that's what I'm saying. Either one or two things can happen. They can back down, reform, say we're sorry, release restrictions, open government, and everybody goes home. The protesters, like, they gaslight, right? That's what's going to happen most likely. They're going to gaslight and say, okay, we're sorry, my bad, haha, we were just kidding. Everybody goes home. All the protesters go home, and then as soon as they go home, they turn it around back on them, right? That's most likely what I think will happen. However, being that crazy son of a bitch that I am, you know, with my degree in political science and keen eye for history, I tell you what I think the worst case scenario here is that they double down, right? They triple down on the protesters. After getting pushed off, after the police show up and being overpowered by just the sheer number of protesters and people there to support the truckers, that they back down, that they get owned. Not the protesters. I'm talking about the police. I'm talking about federal authority, federal powers, as I described in the Bundy Ranch scenario a moment ago. And when that happens, I expect that the federal powers, once they are pushed off their base, once they are pushed off their situation, they will call in military powers. And let me just explain something to you right now, man. I already know Americans who are out there right now. I know Americans who are there in Canada assisting the protesters. There are also Americans at the American border with Canada assisting this protest. We're just talking about Canada and America here, guys. We're not even talking about other places of the world in Europe and Australia and New Zealand where this same scenario is playing out. Just talking about this here right now with us because it's important. And here's what I'm getting at. We clearly see a scenario evolving here between America and Canada. Neighbors, friends, family on both sides of the border. once the protesters are successful in pushing back the police action, once the protesters are successful in pushing back the federal action, once the protesters are successful in bolstering their numbers and receiving material support financially and in terms of just people support, that the militaries will be called out. And that's what I'm getting at right now. The global world order has established itself to be able to deal with this globally. I mean, do you think they're going to let Canada flip? Do you think they're going to let Australia flip to, to the populist movements? Do you think they're going to let New Zealand flip, or France, or the UK, or Germany, or any of these countries? Do you think they're going to let them flip? Fuck no. The Anglo-American establishment, the Anglo-American Empire, the Western NATO, whatever you want to call us, the English-speaking empire, is not going to let another country go like they let the United States. It's taken them 200 to 300 years to retake us back over, financially, militarily, you know what I mean? Governmentally speaking. They're not going to let Canada flip. And so what are they going to do? They're going to enlist the militaries of the United States and Canada and dispatch them with global support to go and deal with this problem. Dude, they're already doing that in the Ukraine. They're not going to let the Ukraine flip, right? They're not going to let that happen. And so they're dispatching a multinational Zerg, NATO, and friends to deal with the threat of them flipping. And that's what I'm getting at in Canada, dude. We all already know there's American, people there. There's American dollars with GoFundMe. A lot of that money is American money, by the way. The Give, Send, Go. There's American people on the ground there helping out with the blockade, delivering supplies and goods. So when the establishment, right, becomes challenged and their hegemony is threatened, they will call for help. And the help they're going to call for will be United States military, as well as other nations' militaries to back up the Canadian fallen government, right? And so we have American citizens on the ground in Canada helping the protests. And so are we going to have American military there putting down this insurrection, as they call it, putting down this threat to their hegemonic control? I mean, imagine the scenario is what I'm getting at here, guys. All of that to say this. In a foreign theater, Canada, we're going to have American citizens standing up against American military. And the American citizens are there to defend and reinforce the Canadian trucker convoy protest, the convoy of freedom, right? Freedom Convoy. And the American military will be there to stop the protest and to stop Canada from falling and becoming a populist situation. That is clearly the scenario. That is going to happen. Give it 2 weeks, right? I'm just taking these ideas all the way out to conclusion here. In a foreign battleground, American military there to suppress a resistance that's bolstered by American citizens, man. This is crazy. And I can't believe we're here now, right? But here we are. And by the way, I hope this doesn't happen. I'm not like trying to fearmonger you. I'm just trying to make you think the logical conclusion of the events unfolding here. And if any of you ever played chess, this is what you have to do, right? When you're facing an enemy on the chessboard, as he moves pieces and you move pieces, you have to think about the moves that person is going to make in response to your moves, or just as a matter of their game that they're playing. And that's what I'm saying here, right? On this chessboard, the game that they're playing is not to lose. They're not going to lose. They're not going to allow this to happen. They're not going to allow themselves to get the Canadian government to be flipped. That's not possible here. It's not possible. They're not going to forfeit Canada. And by the way, as if Canada is even a free country. No offense to you Canadians, but come on, man. You guys never overthrew your queen, just like Australia and just like New Zealand. You are protectorates of the realm, right? Like, it doesn't even have to come to the United States military showing up to help. Dude, the Royal Military will show up to help, right? And if they get owned, you know, then they'll have to call in, like, the United States. And look, the United States military doesn't have to help them with boots on the ground. They can just provide ammunition. They can just provide material support, logistics support, intelligence support, right? SIGINT, human, right? It's just a very bad situation for us here. It's a very, very bad situation for Canada right now. But they have to do this. They have to press the attack in the information war. The Canadian people who are standing up to this tyranny they have to 1776 right now. This is the only chance they'll ever have to do this in the next 1,000 years. And as the one guy said 2 weeks ago, if we fuck this up, there will never be another opportunity. And I agree with that, man, 100%. If the Canadians do not seize this opportunity to take control of their own destiny right now, at this precise moment, they will never be presented with this opportunity again. And they will never be their own country. They will always be under the English monarch. Yeah, man, it's a really windy day. Holy shit. Just out here cruising on the MT-07, man. Nice warm day. 75 degrees on the dial right now. Need to get gas in the engine right now. I need to get gas right now. I think I got like 60 miles left on this tank before. Probably less than that, man. Probably 40 miles left on the tank. I think I'll take that way. So that's really all I kind of had, man, on this. I wanted to talk about that, this scenario. I was talking to someone who I have a lot of respect and love for, someone who I'm very proud of in my life. And, you know, this person was saying, you know, despite what most citizens think, the military are not trying to kill people. And that's not the point. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the military is a tool used by authoritarian governments to exact their ends, right? And in this case, I just don't see the machines stepping down or standing idly by as citizens take control of their government and their destinies and remove from them the chains of a tyrannical authoritarian system. And that tyrannical authoritarian system does not have the means necessary to defend itself against a freedom uprising. And their attempts to slander and defame the Canadian convoy have failed, right? At a parliamentary, on a mainstream media, governmental level, they have failed at delegitimizing their attempts to delegitimize the Freedom Convoy, calling them Nazis or Confederates or whatever. It's completely failed. And here's the funny part, right? The so-called left governments, you know, the authoritarians in control globally right now, are supposedly the government representing the people and the working class, right? Like, and so what are truckers? They're usually, not all, but they're usually unionized labor class individuals, right? That is your target audience if you're so-called left, right? Those are the people who you would want to vote for you. And here you are, attempting to use authoritarian control to shut down their organic protest of your own policies, which reeks of irony on many levels, man. Right? These people just want to go back to work. They just want to resume their lives. They just want to get back to normalcy at some level. They just want to continue on to work, making us a wage and providing for their families, going back to school, or whatever it is that they do. And their attempts to do so are being shut down majorly, man. By the government power party that is supposed to represent them. And so this is how you radicalize a movement, you know, from greater political decision against your own supposed party, you know what I mean? Like, and this just goes to show you that the bifurcation of political parties is an illusion, right? When it comes to matters of things like foreign policy or taxation or, you know, government intervention, or the ability of people to just operate and live their lives, that this isn't a party-driven discussion. This is actually an idea-driven discussion. And so, you know, the straight ticket mindset of, oh, voting all Republican or, oh, voting all Democrat, based on whatever leanings you think you have, is illegitimate and discredited. And so you need to be nuanced in your opinions and the people who you support, because anyone at any time can turn into a tyrant to maintain their own power, to maintain their own hegemony. And we see that across, you know, economics, across religion, across all ideas of expression, right? We see that everywhere. And here we are, man, right? That's what I'm saying here. Like, what the fuck is this dude doing in the Jeep, man? The scenario I described momentarily ago with American citizens potentially being confronted by their own military in a foreign theater, Canada, is a discussion that you need to talk about that. You need to push that idea to your friends and your family, and to police and law enforcement people who are kind of still galvanized in the discussion, they're like solidified and asleep, right? They deny what's going on here, the based reality that we're all in. I would argue that, use that talking point of, so what are you going to do? Are you going to shoot American citizens in Canada because Trudeau and Biden tell you to go there and go put down a protest? Come on, man. Like, I think that discussion is a Rosetta Stone of idea that will help unlock the minds of people who refuse to engage in this type of mental exercise, right? This type of thought experiment where the logical conclusion of someone's so-called political leanings, whether they be liberal or conservative, right? Because don't get me wrong, man, conservatives will do this shit too, right? Conservative right-wingers are just as eager to use police tanks, military escort to shut down protests against their own policies as the left apparently are now, right? And so this isn't necessarily a left versus right debate. This is an exercise in a thought experiment into freedom and not so freedom, right? That's what I'm getting at here. That's what's important here, man. We need to push that idea. You need to situate and equip yourself mentally with this reality that we are in now, and prepare yourself to debate your left and right authoritarian, wannabe authoritarian leaning friends into this type of discussion, right? Because it presents you with multiple what the fuck moments. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like, it presents you with mental scenarios that people think would never happen, but dude, we're just days away from that, right? And I hope I'm wrong on this. I hope that doesn't end up being a reality, but what if it does? And then what, right? You think Biden's gonna call his troops back home? Hell no, dude. And if anyone gets uppity here in America about that, what the hell do you think's gonna happen? And so here domestically in America, we were listening to Harrison Smith's show earlier this week or last week, the American Journal, and a caller called up saying we need to have this Freedom Convoy boycott and surround and disrupt the Super Bowl. And I immediately started tweeting about that on everyone. And this appears to be coming out. The mainstream media is now talking about potential disruption. And in the video that they're playing about the Super Bowl and potential convoy disruption at the Super Bowl, they're cruising around with the military and federal marshals cruising around in Black Hawk helicopters around the Super Bowl. And so that becomes a situation where, oh shit, they're going to false flag the Super Bowl and blame it on the convoy, so that you can never be pro-convoy again. Just like they've done here of January 6th. You can never say, oh, I disagree with the election outcome again, because now you're with the J6ers, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, was this idea and this methodology being employed right now by the establishment to use this situation on the heads and the tails aspect of this, right? To win on both sides of the coin toss. And so we as individual freedom fighters who are nuanced enough to know the difference between left and right and how there really is no difference, have to navigate this carefully, because we are rapidly approaching a scenario, I believe, where this may not go well for them or us, and they will use this against us in every possible means. So that's all I got for this video, guys. Kind of a long one, sorry about that, but you know, we were just cruising around. Alright guys, y'all take it easy. I'll catch y'all on the next video. Maybe later on today or tomorrow we'll make some more footage, alright? Take it easy, y'all be safe and stay alert.